welcome to another episode of Jason and Bart Show. Hey, we have a guest finally, Jason. Finally.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, who do we have?
Want to introduce to the audience today, Adam Kurzawa. Just learned how to say his last name correctly, even though I probably didn't say it correctly. He is the director of business development at Expand the Room, a remote digital agency. He is located here in the great city of New York. A fellow Ranger fan. And I'm going to have to say it. He's just left of Carmark. So if anybody wants to jump in there, leave your comments down below.
Let YouTube have at it.
Go nuts, YouTube. Go nuts. No, we're here to talk a little bit about going old school. Environments are changing for digital agencies. The sales cycles are changing, and Adam's been doing this for a really long time, very successfully. And in some of the conversations we had, he started to talk to us about, what's old is new again, and maybe some tactics that our audience can utilize to navigate through a very different sales environment than we've probably been dealing with the last couple of years. So, Adam, welcome. Golf clap.
Welcome to our fun show.
Clap for you. Yes.
Am I the first guest you've had?
You are the very first
guest, sir.
Oh man, what an honor! This is killer.
This is it.
That's great.
This is it.
I love it.
So I guess
comrades.
You are. That's right. That's right. I guess we're let's start at the beginning, which is we've given you a really poor intro here. If there's any background you want to give us around you, and then would love to jump in and just start off with what are you seeing? What do you see out there as you start to navigate the environment?
Yeah. Hey, look, intro is great. I give you an A+. It's killer. And you nailed the pronunciation. Wow, where do I begin? So it's funny. I was literally on a call right before we started doing the show with someone, just talking about sales tactics, and they were like, "Hey, I've seen your name around, and what the heck do you do?" So I guess the quick version is, prior to my life at Expand the Room, I worked in marketing and to some capacity sales in music and entertainment. And I know that has really informed the way that I approach relationship building, which all sales is relationships. I don't care what anybody says. And just doing the tactics and the day-to-day of what we do. I've been at Expand the Room now for 13 years. As you mentioned, we're fully remote. It's not due to the pandemic. We actually went remote in 2018, and we were pretty lucky that we did it when we did, able to get our act in order before the world shut down and everybody had to kind of figure it out on the fly. What am I seeing now? So it's pretty interesting. Bart knows, he's part of a great monthly call with some other digital agency owners and salespeople. And Jason, you and I have talked, last year was funky, like
it's a good word
funkier than I remember it. I mean, I think at the end of the year, we were all going around sharing like our word for the year on how business was. And I just said it was weird.
Yeah.
We all experience those dropouts in business and radio silence in July and August because people are on vacation and it's the summer and it is what it is and you expect it. Like post-COVID, man, those cycles are out the window. Last year, mid-May, it got super quiet for us at Expand the Room, and it extended well past August into September, and it was pretty gnarly for a bit. We were like having senior team meetings about, what is this going to sustain? Like, what do we have to do with our team? And in October, it was like a faucet turned on, and it was just crazy busy for the end of year, which might be the only trend I've seen continue in this pandemic era. Is it feels like Q4 is going to be the new like bigger than years previous to that, like the big money drop.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have, like we always talk about, pent up demand and all that stuff, and it happened again. And this year, January was weird, and now things are starting to shake loose. So I mean, when I think about going old school, and we'll get into what exactly the hell that means. I just think, now that we're, I guess, I'd say last summer was when things started to feel a little bit more normal, where clients were in the office 3 days a week and they were open to meeting sales teams and agencies in person, you've got the ability to do some things and flex some muscle memory that none of us have done in a really long time, because we've been living in this little digital, Zoom, Google Meet box
Yep.
for the better part of 3 years. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. I mean, it's, I'm the first to say, like, I'm not an economist. I will not even pretend to play one on TV. Is this a 6-month inflation recession? I think one of our friends on our call, Bart, called it a tech session, which I think is a really interesting and cool term, because it's definitely tech pullback from all the overhiring and the overspending they did in 2020 and 2021. Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? Does it even matter? Are we a lagging indicator and we're just going to keep selling gangbusters? You just got to keep doing the hard sale work and just, keep working at it. You can't let that outside noise get you down.
Yeah, I think it's pushing into, I mean, it's right sizing the industry itself too, right? Like, a year ago we were like, oh my God, Jason and I talked about this. It's like, oh my God, all this pricing, all this like money is floating around and people getting paid insanely and double their salaries. And then by the end of the year, it started being opposite,
Yeah.
There's
I mean, how funny was that? We were having conversations in March and April last year about engineers wanting 2 to 3 times their salary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then by the end of the year, it was like, hit a piñata and developers will fall out. Like there were resources available everywhere because everyone was getting laid off.
By the way,
But
that's a great visual. That's a great visual that we should build at some point.
I mean, it's
developer
it's
piñata.
Not wrong. You're not wrong, sir.
It's interesting. I agree. I think we're seeing a tech session. That's a good term. I think we're seeing that now because I think they're the first ones to feel the pain because they were so wildly that their pendulum swung so wildly on this side that now they're the first to have it swing back the other way. But you are starting to see it seep into a few other sectors here and there. And I think what'll be really interesting, and I think Bart makes a good point. I think for the audience out there, understanding who your clients are in terms of industry and sector is really important because different segments of the economy are going to get hit at different times. It looks like it doesn't look like it's going to happen all at once. It's going to be different pieces of it as we sort of, whether it's the interest rates making their way through the economy or whatever. Right.
I think that's a great point. And knowing where your clients, whether you're vertically focused or you deal kind of more wide spectrum, where are they in the life cycle of this thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for you as a service provider? Because ultimately we're all in the service business. So, does it mean they're laying people off prematurely and they're still going to need to do all this work and they're eventually going to hire agencies?
Yeah.
Maybe. Or are they going to try to insource more and just not spend externally? Like it's hard. This is where like leaning on like, and I think, this is not something junior salespeople can just roll out of bed and learn. You just got to do it by being out there and doing it and listening to your clients and seeing trends. You really got to lean on your experience to know who to reach out to, how you're going to get a pulse inside your clients and figure out the writing on the wall and get that kind of back channel that normally people only care about in the RFP process. I think it's way more important when they're an existing client in year 5 and a recession hits. You need that information way more.
Trying to figure out where the puck is going is going to be probably a lot more important. I was having this conversation earlier where, the last few years in terms of, in the digital agency space, you could go to a client and say, you need technology and you need a website. And they would go, of course we do. It's digital transformation and we're in the pandemic. And of course we need a website. So go build me a website. And I think now like everything's been architected and built. And now everybody's taking a look at what they have and going, well, we know we need to make improvements, but we're not just going to throw money at the solution every single time. I think value prop and ROI are going to become much more back in vogue for salespeople as they pitch than maybe it had been the last couple of years, where it was just like, you need technology so badly, you don't really even care right now about ROI. You just need it. You don't have it and you need it.
Yeah.
And now that you have it, it's like, what are you going to do to optimize it? Are you seeing something similar to that?
Yes, but I also think it's a what you're describing it's not really a symptom. It's an after effect of the fact that as much as the three of us hate to say it, we're all getting older, which means the people that are in seats of power on the client side are way more tech savvy than they were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So they literally like were born with an iPhone in their hand. So whereas I was making the joke with someone the other day, like I now have people that we've done work for, and 10 years later, they're retiring. It's not like they got another job and they went somewhere and maybe they're going to take you with them.
Yeah.
Peace out. I'm golfing. It was great working with you. I will never see you again because I'm never going to open LinkedIn again. Right. Like,
Right.
so now you've got like this, this younger turnover where, maybe you've got someone who was in a mid-level role that's now an SVP or maybe approaching a C level. Their demands on you qualifying why they should make that purchase as a salesperson, the bar is going to be much higher to prove the value. Well, wait a minute, like, you're telling me I need all this stuff. Yeah, but like, I know enough about WordPress and it doesn't sound like it should be that expensive, da da da. Like, objection handling is going to be different. It's not going to
Yeah.
be just justifying the spend. It's going to be justifying the tactics you're using, the ROI, the long-term value. We've had conversations, like really intelligent and fun conversations of late with clients where they know up front they're going to have to make a bigger spend than they want to make in a calendar or fiscal year. But they also are smart enough to know that digital is the front door to your whole organization, and it's going to last, if you build it well, multiple years. So you can amortize that cost over multiple years. So the spend can be justified. So I think maybe we're just swapping one set of vernacular and objection handling for some new stuff, but it's definitely going to change.
Yeah, I
Definitely
don't think the demand for what this community does is going anywhere on the client
That's
side.
right.
I think the speed at which decisions are made to go build. Yes. Yes. Green light. Yes. Signature. Yeah. I think that process
Oh yeah.
is slowing down. That seems to be what we're seeing. I was telling Bart yesterday when we were recording, we have a client, and again, and this goes back to sector specific stuff too. I think if you have enterprise clients in tech right now, right? So they're cutting everywhere. They're cutting, and we have a client who's like a $500 billion market cap client whose CFO is literally having every contract, no matter the size of the contract, cross their desk before they go ahead and give the green light. That's where we're at right now, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's really. Can you as you look at the landscape and you sort of describe it, can you maybe talk about a couple of strategies or tactics that you think might be effective, or that from your experience, maybe pre-pandemic when there was a little bit more of the in-person stuff?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that?
Yeah. I think it's going back a little bit to what I said earlier, I think it's important to just put it in perspective of what everyone's been through in the last 3 years. We went from March of 2020, where involuntarily everyone as you know it, for the most part, except for maybe a dude that works on a construction site, was working remotely. And we all lived and breathed in this Zoom box for several months. About a year later, you had the outburst of Zoom fatigue. Nobody wanted to be in this little box anymore, but we still couldn't quite be in person. So then, like, how are you talking to people if you can't see them in the little digital box? And how do you figure that out? To now, like I said, I think last summer and more so at the start of this year, more and more clients are in the office a couple days a week. They're more open to maybe taking a lunch, getting a coffee, having you come by the office, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I think about that, I think there's a unique opportunity. There were a handful of shops that I know that really leaned in probably a year and a half ago, like really premature to most other people, on saying, we're going to make it our differentiation point. We're going to go meet everybody in person because nobody is traveling, right? and kudos to them. I don't think all of our clients are ready for it.
I don't think all
But
of
I
our
think,
staff was ready for it.
Yeah.
and some staff might not be ready for it, right? We're planning our first team offsite in May.
Mhm.
I haven't seen our full team in person since 2019, which is
Crazy.
is
That's
crazy.
insane. That's insane.
So when I think about the combination of pre-pandemic and then also my history working in music and promoting things on a much more hand-to-hand tactical level, like when we used to do music events, I'm going to totally date myself here. Like in 1998 and 1999, my job was you do a full day's work from 10 to 6 or 10 to 7 in the office at the music marketing company. You go grab a bite to eat, and then you take a backpack full of flyers for the next event that you're doing. And you go to a couple record stores, a couple bars, you put them out. Then you go outside like the nightclubs in the meatpacking district and you stand there till 3 in the morning, getting people as they come out, completely bleary eyed. Um, and you're talking to them and making eye contact and saying, "Hey, got an event coming up. Here's blah blah blah." Boom, you hit them with a flyer, that kind of thing. It's like thinking like old school like that. I think now you've got ways you can be really creative and stand out, and they're not like mind blowing things here. Take the opportunity to force your way up to see a client in person. Why do you want to do that? What did the Zoom box not allow us to do? When you're walking through the hallway with your client, you get to see everybody else that's working there. The likelihood that they're going to introduce you to someone or someone's going to pop into the conference room when you're talking
Mhm.
is like exponentially higher. And all of that connective tissue of like having that random happenstance meeting that turns into a connection that you can then do something with, like that was gone in the Zoom era. So really leaning into things like that. Phone call, we were talking earlier this week. I was talking to someone about how do you do outbound outreach to people that you've never met before, and there's a whole bunch of different things you can do there. But you know these days, phone calls and actually not looking at a screen when you're talking, in my
Mhm.
opinion, to some people of a certain age, is a highly enviable thing to have happen in their life.
Yeah.
To not have to think about where are my eyes going, but just be able to focus on a voice and a conversation. So, find a head office number, call, can I speak to so and so on the marketing team? Great, they're not there. You leave the 30 to 60-second voicemail. At the end of the voicemail, you say, I'm going to follow up with an email. You send them with an email that says, hey, left you a quick voicemail. Just want to see if we can schedule some time. You're also reviewing their LinkedIn. So now you've got 3 touch points across
Mhm. Yep.
voicemail and email, LinkedIn, and hopefully you get to see them in person. You're now at your 4th touch point. Like doing these things to manufacture the in person as much as possible, I think is like just like such a must this year for people
Yep.
that are selling, particularly in the service industry.
It's ironic as we get more and more technologically savvy that the thing that still converts is analog,
Yeah.
right? It is being in the room,
Yeah.
and sharing that energy, right? We talk a lot about aligned expectations as a key metric of success. That's really hard to like. It's really hard to make tangible and tactile. It's something that you can feel because it doesn't have a number on it, And I think this
Yeah.
is one of those. This is one of those things. We talk a lot about. We recorded an episode a while ago. We were talking about sales, and we were talking about how important it is to educate and engage clients, especially when you're selling them technology. And you're making a good point that yes, the buyers are getting a bit younger, so they are more technologically savvy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they all know how to code or that they understand the effort that goes into building or doing what
Hmm.
digital agencies do, but they understand tech. Let's just say a little bit better. Um, how do you go about educating and when I talk about engagement, what I really am trying to say is I think one of the hardest things to do in the world is sell technology because you're selling something that is expensive to strangers who don't understand really what you're selling, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of barriers there, and you guys have a really hard job. Education and engagement are things that can break down those barriers for the clients. You educate them on the technology or how you deliver and all those things, but also getting them to kind of come back and engage with you instead of it being all kind of sales. So how do you make it feel more organic? How do you get them to sort of engage?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think it plays into a lot of the, you know, lead vetting that we all need to do up front anytime something comes through the door. And what I mean by that is not only finding, you know, what is the tech maturity of the client and what do they already know
Mhm.
and where can we fill gaps, but also are we talking to the people that are going to make the decision to actually hire you versus the person who's been tasked with getting 5 qualified agencies to break their back on
Right.
putting a proposal in,
Right.
right? So if you can figure out, okay, I'm talking to, you know, Susie here and Stanley and Pam are actually the real decision makers. How quick can I get a phone call with Stanley and Pam and figure out their tech maturity level and all of that? But you know, the overarching piece in all of this though is listening. James and I, our CEO, we were on a call earlier today and we had a prospect. We're, you know, meeting them in a week or so. And, you know, this is early days and I've met them once in person. And she said, hey, you know, and James hadn't met her before. And she said, you know, Adam's done a really good job just listening to us. We had 2 other shops come in that told us all the stuff we needed before we even told them what we wanted.
Mm.
And it's, you know, the cliche of, you know, if you shut your trap as a salesperson long enough, the client will tell you what they need. And then it's your job to appropriately fill the gaps and show where you can add
Yeah.
value and coach them. The tools that we use, you know, we'll take, you know, we're doing a much better job now as an organization writing thought leadership and insight articles that not only
Mhm.
reinforce our positioning, but really talk about common issues that our clients see all the time, whether it's an SEO issue, a content strategy issue, more technical things with Gutenberg and WordPress, those kinds of things. So just again, paying attention to the cues they're giving you, you know, where are we going to have to really help them more than an average project? Maybe it's the content lift. Okay, great. So I've got a piece here that I think they might enjoy, and getting them those things, but really listening and picking up on cues of what people need. Being able to shut up is such a
Oh man.
it is such a skill, and I'm still bad at it, but
But also, like,
yeah,
shut up, like, extensively do it, like, on purpose, long, like, actually just stop talking, like, uncomfortably do it.
like
Um,
when
Well,
you
there's
do that,
this.
like that breath thing, when
Right.
someone's still
Right.
talking, and you're like, I'm gonna jump in right now. Hold your breath.
right, just hold your breath. Yep.
Just
There's a
hold it.
thing.
Like you don't need to talk.
There's a thing in like theater for actors that's called, they talk about active listening, and that
Yes. Yeah.
the best actors, you know, they don't really even pay attention to the script. If they're really just paying attention to the person who they're acting with, then they're just really responding
Yeah.
to the other person because they're so intently listening. And you
Mhm.
make such a great point. I think I'm stealing this from somebody because I heard this the other day and I really liked it. And it's not new, I'm sure, but somebody said something like, with clients, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I thought that was
It's great.
really, really good. And they're never going to know how much you care if you're talking all the time. So I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a great point, Adam.
Well,
Um,
and whether you care or not is usually not something you can convey on your website. Like they can look at your website and go, "Oh yeah, they design great responsive front end sites that are super performant and achieve all my SEO goals."
Yeah.
They have no idea if you care that they're a nonprofit that does X, Y, and Z, and you've worked
right.
with 4 others that actually meet the same needs. Yeah, they'll
And I
never
think
know that unless you
that's where
tell
that
them.
word empathy gets thrown out a lot, and I think unfortunately it gets misinterpreted into like the traditional definition of empathy, which is highly like around emotional empathy. But this is really about, you know, in this scenario, this is about business empathy, right? Really understanding who
Hmm.
they are, what their needs are, why they want this piece of technology, what this piece of technology is going to mean for them, their people, their stakeholders, their clients, not just their numbers in the bottom line, but how's it going to impact other human beings. And to your point,
Right.
this whole thing is about that human experience, and tying that in. Talking really quickly about education, and talking about more tech savvy clients. One of the things that I know we run into a lot is yes, they are more tech savvy, but one thing that I personally remain pretty stringent on is clients are the least educated people in the room to tell you how much it should cost. Can you talk to us a little bit about budgeting and effort versus client expectations around those things and how you sort of
Wow.
bridge that gap?
Wow, that's a
We
whole
do a whole
podcast,
show on
huh?
that. I know.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, we'll bring you
there's
back,
so,
Adam. That's the thing.
yeah, I mean, like, which piece of the onion do we want to peel back? I mean, yeah, there's a lot to tackle there. So, first and foremost, let's just take it from, I mean, let's just keep it focused on the salesperson perspective. The sooner you can get Stanley and Pam to show some of their cards on what they think is an appropriate budget for something, the sooner you're going to know what you're dealing with. Like, are you really going to have to de-scope your expectations on what you can deliver to be inside of a really adjusted budget? Or are they going to say, hey, well, as long as we're under seven figures, we're good. And then you're like, okay, now we've got some breathing room. We can do all the polish and sparkles that you want.
Does expand the room do a variety of different types of contracts, or does it really try to focus on more T&M or more fixed or more retainer?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got our purpose-driven design process is really aimed on three key phases. So it's strategy, which is all of the discovery things that you would expect that an agency would do in strategy. But we really use that. I'd say that's the part that, as a salesperson, I am most comfortable selling that as a fixed bid body of work,
Mm-hmm.
because if I've had two or three conversations with the client, and I'll give major kudos to James, our CEO, on this. Something I've definitely learned and picked up, unique to his style, that he's got patience on this piece that most other people don't. He'll force like a fourth and fifth conversation with someone before a proposal, to just keep asking questions and letting people talk to you more and more to just kind of give you a little more context. And like, those little extra details can sometimes really, really, be
Sure.
the difference in what your proposal is going to be. So yeah, I mean, our discovery engagements, whether they're 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks plus, depending on what you feel the size of the project going to be, those are things I feel confident in fixed bidding. And then from there, our phase two implementation, that can be a whole lot of things that can come out of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked about, deal structure. Most of my like net new, like first time client deals go like this. Phase one discovery, we're going to spend 6 weeks doing these tactics. The outcome's going to be a readout with requirements with, pretty high fidelity that we're going to know what you want to build. From there,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a choose your own adventure thing. We can come back to you for everything in that requirements list and give you the full Lamborghini budget and tell you what it's going to cost. You can choose to say, hey, I have a Lamborghini budget. Let's go. Great. Now I'm writing phase two. We're going off into the sunset. That almost never happens. Most times people go, love the Lamborghini. I want to get there next year, but I can do a BMW Series 3.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of carving things back. And now your phase two is a defined set of features. You're writing it. But what I love about doing always doing the pie in the sky discovery is, as much as possible, we want to give them a roadmap and something aspirational to see what this could become if we did everything
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah.
And really demonstrate, like, we heard you say this, and like, these are the challenges we heard you say, and this is how we think you can meet those objectives and opt and get past all those goals. um, because then, if you have a successful phase two, in phase three of our process, the growth and optimization phase, that can be maintenance, it can be creative services. We can, dust off that roadmap and go, hey, you know what, if we put a new fender on this thing, man, you're gonna
Right.
have a Lamborghini. And that becomes your 2024 deal, where you're doing the next phase of the project. So that's how most of our projects work. And then, we're very fortunate. We've had clients that, have worked with us 6, 7, 10 years and are just retainer based, which I think is more in line with the way Bart works. And when they've got the ability to have access to our team, and do things on the fly, in a much more relaxed way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Adam. We have one more last question, which we'll ask every guest, and we ask each other every single week. What are you
Love it.
currently what are you currently obsessed with?
This could be
Oh,
like
man.
podcast, movie, book,
It
whatever,
doesn't matter.
TV. It
It's
could be anything.
literally, what are you obsessed with?
All right, I've got two. The first one's lame, and I'm going to say it anyway because I'm late to it. but I was up late one night, and Apple TV's got this series For All Mankind, which
Yes.
is based. Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
No.
But yeah, the whole premise is it's like the '60s space race, and it's what if the Soviet Union landed on the moon first, and like
Okay.
what would the future look like after that? And it's pretty entertaining and fun. The second one, I've got to live up to being left of Karl Marx. Is another podcast, not competition with you guys whatsoever, called Blowback, and they basically take a look at American foreign policy and how those things can blow back in our faces. And they've done 3 seasons. They did Iraq, they've done Cuba, and then they just did Korea, which was outstanding. And I think this summer they're dropping Afghanistan, which I'm sure will be a riveting listen. But it is one of the most well researched and insanely addictive podcasts I've ever listened to. They do a really good job.
Nice. I have to check that out.
Interesting.
That'd be awesome. Well,
Sure,
Adam.
shooting down balloons will make it on there at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast writes itself at this point.
Yeah, pretty. They have a lot of content
Turn the
for
news on.
past 2 months.
They got plenty of runway.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Adam, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us. This was great. Really great. Thank you.
As our first guest.
Having me. I really appreciate it.
It's awesome. Well,
First
thank you
guest.
again. And we'll see you guys next week with another awesome guest, we think. Maybe. We shall see. Bye.
Take care, everybody.